years ago today, Angola became an independent country. The following program will be dedicated to Angola's history to celebrate this anniversary. We will discuss Angola's rich history from their pre-colonial days to their current events and how they will celebrate this monumental anniversary. Here's Analia, who has just returned from Luanda, Angola's capital.
Hello everyone! As you just heard, I recently came back from my trip to Angola, where I have learned that it is also called the Congo Kingdom during the Stone Age by the Bantus. Angola was colonized by Portugal in 1575. The earliest known modern human inhabitants to have lived in the Angolan territory were the Khoisan, who were known to be hunter-gatherers. Later on, tribal groups like the Bantus and the Munda populated Angola territory.
Yes, and Angola's colonization has had a big impact on the country. Portugal had a minimalist presence in Angola for nearly 500 years. Early calls for independence provoked little influence in the population, who had no social identity related to the territory as a whole. Contact with Brazil resulted in the transfer of cassava plant to Portugal that came into Angola and were cheap. This greatly impacted Angola's agriculture. Products from Portugal that came into Angola were beginning to fail, which directly weakened Angola's economy and made them poorer.
The arrival of the Western technologies and ideas came to Angola, making many people's lives better. The arrival of new things provoked Angola's curiosity to the Western world and improved their level of civilization. The Portuguese took the national resources from Angola and sold their products there. This destroyed Angola's local economy system, taking away its wealth. The Portuguese government also established harsh laws to benefit from Angola. People had to work hard, pay heavy taxes, and their living conditions were decreased, causing a decrease in the population.
During this colonial rule in Angola, colonizers made groups to represent their interests. Many different political groups rose up after Angola gained its independence, scrabbling to gain control of this land.
Angolans have been resisting colonization by the Portuguese since the very beginning. What ignited the flame for Angola's independence was what the position Portugal was entitled as first origin country instead of Angola.
When slavery had been abolished within the Portuguese Empire in 1875, slavery continued in Angola, and this sparked the beginning of a resistance. After a long time, once the Belgian Congo achieved independence in 1960, it sent a chain reaction to all other colonized African countries, including Angola, to fight for their independence. As soon enough, anti-colonial movements were developed. Finally, Angola achieved their independence in November of 1975.
But not in the way they hoped. Before the Portuguese had given Angola their independence, there had been a civil war accompanied by an anti-colonial war. This mess of violence was between the UNITA, or National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, the MPLA, or the Popular Liberation Movement of Angola, and the FNLA, or the National Front for the Liberation of Angola, and, of course, the Portuguese. Not wanting to deal with this chaos any longer, the Portuguese left without any succeeding government in charge of Angola. This was the start of a 3-decade war. Civil War.
During the Angolan Civil War, there were a lot of negative reports and biased international media attention in South Africa. This was mainly due to the language barriers that served in best interest of those with intent to paint a negative picture of the MPLA government, which was then in power of Angola's capital. This media attention ignored almost all of the positive developments that the MPLA government was. After Angola's abrupt independence, Angola was left in horrible conditions. The 26-year civil war ended finally in 2002.
Can you imagine 26 years of civil war and having it finally end just so very recently? You should know Angola's civil war has displaced around 2 million people, which is just about the sixth of its population.
It must have been a horrible period of time to go through. Half of the population became unemployed, and 70% were over the poverty line. Hunger has become a threat in many areas. The government estimated a level of illiteracy following the independence was to be about 85 to 90%. To fix these issues became an immediate task.
I can imagine. Just only a year into their newly found independence, and more than 80% of the agricultural plantations have been abandoned. Only a third of their factories continue to operate. 75% of the medium to high-skilled technicians, managers, and workers left their country. Many enterprises have been closed and their trading network disrupted, and their administrative services gone, because the Portuguese did not teach the Angolans to operate large enterprises or how to educate the population.
At least not in the Portuguese way of thinking. Just saying. Given that the MPLA had current possession of the capital and guaranteed support of the USSR and Cuba, Cuba sent in a teacher to help Angola's education grow, and the government established state farms to help their people get a head start on the plantations. They took over the operations of the factory to manage productions, which usually lacked of experienced managers. Only the petroleum operations continued to work successfully.
In 1987, the government announced plans to liberalize economic policies and promote private investment and involvement in the economy.
Angola's current events have much to do with their history.
Angola is working in many ways to rebuild their country after the Civil War. For example, they have a program in breeding large rats that help detect landmines that have been in the ground since the Civil War ended in 2002. They are connected to a string with a treat at the end to keep them in a straight line. Once they detect TNT, they scratch the ground, acknowledging that there is a landmine there.
But don't the rats set off those landmines?
No. They're too late. You know, these rats have also been bred to detect tuberculosis, and the British royals came once to Angola to see how the project was going. To finish off today, we will be telling some facts. Lena, would you like to start?
Well, I do know a lot about Angola. For example, Angola is most known for its large supplements of oil and diamonds. Even dinosaur bones have been found. According to Jim Alger's article, A Dinosaur, a Crocodile, and a Mammal Walking to a Future Diamond Mine, Jim says that footprints found in one of Africa's largest diamond mines show a mixed group of animals including a dinosaur, a crocodile-like figure, and a mammal the size of a raccoon that wandered across the landscape about 118 million years ago.
It's such a beautiful place. Two leaders who have influenced Angola were Agostinho Neto and José Eduardo dos Santos. Neto became the first president of Angola and was the leader of the most popular movement, MPLA. He also took a big part in Angola's independence by being a liberation leader. He and some other African students took part in opposing the dictatorship in Portugal. He was arrested and imprisoned on 3 occasions for organizing petitions, joining in demonstrations, and writing poetry that talked about the conditions of African life under the Portuguese rule and the longing of his people for freedom and justice.
After President Agostinho Neto's death in 1979, José Eduardo dos Santos came to power. He tried to improve the relationship with the West, targeting the U.S., who didn't recognize the MPLA-led government. In the early 1990s, he ordered a withdrawal of Cuban troops that had been in the country since the late 1970s. But his charges did little to blunt UNITA, who only intensified their attacks. Finally, in 1991, José signed a peace agreement with UNITA and agreed to a multi-party election. Still, not until 2002 was the Civil War completely over. And that's your news for today. Thanks for watching.